Welcome to the Shmee Daddy streaming experience. I'm your host, as per usual, Shmee Daddy. If this is the first time you're watching the stream, the founder of the video on YouTube. I'm a monthly Hearthstone Wild Legend player who typically hits Legend first of the month, and after that I goof off, and when I goof off, I play your decks. And this is going to be the keystone to our budget viewer deck challenge. I'm going to go through what I thought were the most successful decks, or at least the most interesting, so that maybe you might find something at the end of this rotation to try in Wild on a budget. The deck that obviously won, Wraxius' adaptation of Blessed Priest. Reminder, the rules for all these decks is they have to cost 5,000 dust or less, can have no more than 2 crafted legendaries, and anything that you have in core or you can get for free from a pack isn't counted toward the dust total. So we've got Wraxius' adaptation of Maxi's Blessed Priest from before the mini set. I forget which cards he cut. I think she cut Shadow Word Devour and maybe another epic someplace. I don't know. But this went 9-2. Be really aggressive, have a lot of tempo, stick a Crab Rider with Orbital Halo as often as you can, especially if you've got the coin, and just sort of go to town on the opponent's face. You can pretty much off-board any aggro decks that you come across, and you can drop stuff like Web Lords, which will trip up even things like Libram Paladins and whatnot. So I really like this deck. I've played it before. I've played it to try and seriously climb in the past. It feels tier 2-ish to me. I wouldn't call it tier 1. It feels tier 2-ish. But it's very strong, and you can draw a lot of cards, and it's really fun, and it's kind of hard to pilot, but when you figure it out, it's very effective. A surprise for the competition was somebody on a lark just said, hey, can I give you standard Weapon Rogue? And I was like, sure, that's a deck that I know well, that I know I can play. And I did well with it. I went 7-4 for the entire competition, though. A lot of those losses started coming towards the end of the competition when the meta deck started getting harder. Yeah, there's something to be said about like fast weapon-based decks in Wild. We do have Kingsbane, but Kingsbane hasn't always been the fastest weapon deck that Rogue has to offer. In the past, we've had something called Cutlass Rogue, and Cutlass Rogue was similar to Kingsbane, where you didn't have to worry about necessarily going and fetching your Kingsbane. You could start buffing a different weapon earlier and then just going face, whether that was your daggers, whether that was your Scimitar Rogue. Whether that was your hooked Scimitar, get it going, get minions down, start smacking face. We're not doing the minion thing so much, but we do have some very effective weapon buffs, and Quick Pick is a hell of a draw engine. So I actually felt very comfortable playing this deck because it felt like that style of deck, which can be faster than Kingsbane and very direct. And in a format with not a lot of taunt right now, outside of maybe some Libram Paladin lists, and not a lot of weapon hate, this was really cool and very effective for me. We even made a wild version, which I'll include on the diagram. This is a little bit less budget conscious, but putting in the Shadow of Demise, adding in the cutting classes, and I think over Wicked Stab over one of the other burn spells. I think those are solid upgrades, and the list should operate just fine as is. But wicked cheap deck. Azalea Kari's Handbuff Paladin. Really good at pushing out Shadow Priests. If you're seeing nothing but lots and lots and lots of Shadow Priests and you just want to beat them up, play this. This is very cheap. It's a nice budget. Again, guys like Blade Master Samuro looking really good. I think at one point we were like 5-0, 6-0 into Shadow Priests. When this deck saw Shadow Priests, it won. If it saw anything else, it was a little bit more of a struggle. You could beat other aggro decks, and you can definitely beat slower stuff by buffing up and then, getting them off board with a big charge turn. But especially against Shadow Priest with all the lifesteal in the deck and the rush, that felt very strong. Full marks to Loran Cleric. I think we went 3-2 with this. This was a Shudderwock control deck that fit the budget requirements. And if you look, I think the only cards you have to craft for it, the legendary cards, are Shudderwock and Golganeth. Everything else you get pretty much for free, and they're pretty high impact. We had some really cool stuff. We even had an ETC with some things in there. We could, go find wives, and wasn't there like there's an Ignis in here. So there's some really cool win conditions value win conditions that you can throw in. And this was pretty effective as a control deck. And also even like We even out-controlled a Holy Wrath Libram Paladin once. So that was pretty neat. This impressed me as like, hey, you don't want to just play aggro? That's fine. There's some cheap control here too. Along the same lines as cheap control, I'm Just Bag was just like, man, I don't have time, and I'm not really connected right now to build a deck. Can somebody build an Odyn control deck for me? And Dreadshot did that. Dreadshot tried their hand at making an Odyn control deck, and the only legendary that we have to craft, I believe, is Odyn. And, Sir Finley of the Seas? Sir Finley of the Seas free? I couldn't remember. But in any case, everything else in here is either core or common or free. I think the one rare was like we've got 2 frozen bucklers. Okay, take them or leave them, I guess. Bladestorm, of course, is in core right now. This felt pretty strong. I think places where we could upgrade this is you might want to consider with a list like this running more rats, because Dirty Rat is going to be one of the ways that you beat some of the combos right now. Some of the combo that we play against is rather fragile. And since we're running shield slams anyway, it's not all that hard to buff up your armor, rat something, and then kill it immediately the same turn. So I would consider upgrading it along that way. But this felt less flexible than the Loran Shudderwock list because, again, it's Control Warrior. It's sort of selling out more to beat aggro than it is to win games against anything else, but it will beat aggro more solidly. This was impressive. This worked very well. I thought the Nasmani Priest was going to get there. I thought this was going to be the best deck of the entire competition, and I'm pretty sure I threw at least one of the losses when I played it. Very fun, very strong, lethals, sometimes turns 4, sometimes turns 5 or 6 is a little bit more reasonable. This is not a big... this is not a big hit to the budget. I think it's only like 3,000 dust. No legendaries crafted. All of it is like, the one thing people are saying like, oh, I don't have the epics. I don't have the Vivid Nightmare. I don't have the Shadow Visions. If that's keeping you away from the list, that's keeping you away from the list. I understand. But very cheap list to try, very fun. Just keep in mind the APM is a little bit tricky. I've definitely thrown some games where my APM is not good enough. Bonus points that I got called a cheater for winning with this deck once. So you'll get some funny ads as well. Last but not least, looks exactly the same almost. This is very close to what I think top players are playing right now in Legend. They're playing like an aggro-y, make a bunch of little shitters go wide and then buff them up with Bless and Orbital Halo and just sort of beat people down. Stick a Crab Rider with Orbital Halo and no one's a gangster anymore. With the difference that we now have a Chrono Boost package as well. You always have the out of buffing up one of the Chrono Boys and then making a hallucination and then cracking them face. Honestly, a spell version is out there floating around that's very cheap. It's all spell. It's no minions. It's fine. It's like close to being good, but it's not really good. So that's also an option. So it's funny, we had in this competition, we had aggro represented, we had like a little bit of a mid-range, we had some control, and we did have some what I would call combo, even though, some of these, depending on how you play them, could be a little bit more tempo-oriented. Wide variety of play styles. Not a lot of dust on the table. Hope you consider playing some of these budget decks in Wild while you're twiddling your thumbs waiting for new cards. If you enjoyed this content, please consider liking, commenting, and subscribing on my YouTube channel.